All right, welcome back, everyone, to the GOATcast podcast. We are back. I am CW, joined by my esteemed colleague, Big Nige. What's up, Big Nige?
Yes, sir. The biggest.
So, yeah, we are back for another week. Hope you guys had a great week. First, before we get into it, prayers out to Kelly Oubre Jr., who had an unfortunate accident. I believe it was last night, was struck by a car. He's in stable condition now, I believe, and he's recovering, but he'll be out for a while. So just prayers for him for a speedy recovery. Like I said, hope you guys had a great week. I know one team that has not had a great week this week, and that is the Los Angeles Clippers, who, as we know, just facilitated a huge blockbuster trade a few weeks ago to acquire James Harden. Since he's entered the lineup, they are 0-3 this past weekend. Yeah, so yeah, is this James Harden experiment working? Is this just too small of a sample size, or is it just not going to work? Let me know what you think.
Okay. Yeah, so when discussing this fit, I think it's too early to say at the moment, but the way they've looked so far, they've looked really bad, man. I mean, I don't want to jump the gun because it's still a very small sample size. But I mean, when you look at how the offense is run, you don't see a lot of ball movement. And one thing that you want to consider with this Clippers team is I feel like they've been very, injury riddled, since the start of the Kawhi and Paul George era. And I really felt like this was the year that I think everything was starting to slowly come together. Like looking how they were playing, watching Westbrook after that, monstrous postseason against the Phoenix Suns, when he looked like basically like the second best player on the floor, sometimes the best. And then you bring in like James Harden, who, is coming off probably not one of his best playoff performances, even though he's not known for having a lot of good playoff performances, like with the Sixers and Brooklyn Nets, et cetera, et cetera. But just looking at that lineup, it's a lot of your turn, my turn. Paul George is basically non-existent in most of those games. I'm not going to give you all those numbers because they're pretty scary. But let's just say playoff P is making his way back in the 2023-24 season because it's looking rough for him. I'm hoping he can get it together because he's just throwing some stuff up there and just hoping it goes in. Looking at that lineup defensively, they're starting, Russ, James Harden, Kawhi, and PG. I think PG's running the 3, Kawhi's running the 4, and then they got Zubac. And I mean, teams are just punishing them down low. I mean, on the glass, interior, like they have like no like paint defense to spell for obviously the lack of perimeter defense they have with now the acquisition of James Harden. And I'll finish by saying this, that Mavericks game where Luka went nuclear and went for 44 points, it's clear that you can definitely see that they're missing that wing depth that they traded to get James Harden. Because it's looking like a guy, when you miss the wing depth that they had to guard the people like Luka, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, that they're going to need for a deep Western Conference run. You could see Luka just toying with him because he knows there's nobody on this floor that can stay with me. We run a pick and roll offense, and if they play a lot of drop coverage, it's just bombs away. And that's what the Mavericks are prone to do. They love shooting a lot of threes, getting up and down the floor. And I just think they're going to be a nightmare for the Clippers if they ever match up in the playoffs.
They were definitely a nightmare Friday night, 144 to 124. So basically, nobody was playing defense that night. My opinion is, and this is what I said when I first heard the news of this trade: if it's not broke, don't fix it. The Clippers were finally healthy. They were finally playing cohesive basketball. And I know they were missing a point guard or, using a team or a group of guys to run the point. But I guess they wanted a, one major floor general. I just feel like for what they gave away, they could have gotten a guy that's perennial all-star point guard. They could have got that for what they gave away to get James Harden, who, as we're seeing, he's just not what he once was. He scored 17, 12, and 14 in each of his games as a Clipper. Only 6 assists, 5 assists, and 3 assists. So bringing him as a playmaker and as a guy that can kind of run the offense, he's not doing it. And Paul George, which you didn't give the numbers, against the Knicks, he had 10 points, 2 for 11. Against Dallas, he had 8 points, 3 for 12. Their 3-point shooting has just took a nosedive over the past 3 games, where they were, before the trade, they were one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the whole NBA. Now they're one of the worst. So what is it? Is it just they're trying to figure it out and James kind of disrupted their flow a little bit? I think so. Bones Highland he was looking really good to start this season. I thought he was a guy they could have got behind and maybe got, snuck into that starting lineup. But now he's relegated to a few minutes every night since they started gradually letting James have more and more time on the court. Is stunning his growth. So the Clippers right now, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to say it's a small sample size and they'll figure it out. They played Memphis tonight. Hopefully, if you lose to Memphis, then it's hopeless for you right now. So, but if they can just kind of string together a few wins and kind of figure out how to, weave James Harden into with those 4 top players, I mean, if it can work, they can be really good. But if it continues the way it's been going, the Clippers are in for a sad 2024 season. And I feel like this could be the ruin of the Clippers because Kawhi and Paul George have maybe a few years left of being, top caliber players. And now that you've disrupted them being healthy and the cohesion they have built, that might have been a big blunder by whoever decided that would be a good fit. And the other thing I want to say is Russell Westbrook. We've seen Russell Westbrook and James Harden twice before on 2 different teams and didn't work on those teams. So what makes you think a third time is going to, especially now that they're on the downside of their careers, what makes you think that those 2 are going to work together now? I don't know. But Ty Lue's got a lot he's going to have to do to get these guys on the right track. But I'm going to switch into some rapid fire kind of questions, responses, and things going on in the league right now. Jamal Murray I believe it's his hamstring. He's out 3 to 4 weeks. Will that hurt the Nuggets in this in-season tournament? I don't think it'll hurt them long term, but will this hurt their chances in the in-season tournament?
So yeah, I mean, looking at the small sample size again, they've been 3-0. They beat the Bulls, they beat the Pelicans by a good amount. I think their first test without Jamal Murray was the game against the Warriors. And it was a pretty even game without him. You could definitely tell that the Nuggets missed his, offensive punch. And when the offense looks a little stagnant, the ball's moving, but shots aren't going in, he's usually that it factor that helps them move them over the top in a lot of those close games. But in terms of the in-season tournament, I really don't think the Nuggets are that worried about it, to be completely honest. I think their eyes are on a much bigger goal, as in, repeating as NBA champions. I will say that the execution late in that game, where Jokic, I think with 24 seconds left against the Warriors, he threw that crazy pass. Steph stole it and brought the game within 2. So, I mean, the only thing I can say, truthfully, they still won that game. And people had a lot of questions about their depth. But Reggie Jackson, he stepped up big in that game against the Warriors. I think he dropped about 20 points, 21 points, something of that nature. He played good. Porter Jr. played good. Aaron Gordon. They have enough people who can step up to spell for Jamal Murray. I just think it can't be a situation where he's injured going into the playoffs, because I think that's what they really need him for. But no, I'm not worried about the incident.
I agree. You want your injuries early, and you hope that they can fully recover from them and get back into the flow of the game. So I guess it's kind of a blessing in disguise because it does give Reggie Jackson time to really develop. So since they are missing Bruce Brown Jr. and who else? Jeff Green, they need some bench scoring. They need some firepower off the bench. And Christian Brown, he's okay, but if that's what you got to trust in the playoffs, you're in some trouble. And as good as Denver is, those guys got to get some rest. So they can't rely on the starting five to play all 48 minutes. So this is good for Reggie Jackson. He can kind of get into the flow and play with the starters, and hopefully he can mesh with them. And so that will carry him into most likely the postseason where they'll likely be. So another quick, let's talk about the Memphis Grizzlies real quick. The Memphis Grizzlies tickets are selling as low as $4 right now. And what's crazy is you can go see a Memphis Grizzly game for less than a Big Mac. So, that's kind of indicative of where they're at right now. Got any comments on the Memphis Grizzly and that low of lows when it comes to ticket sales?
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they're 1-8. Like you said, we're hoping the Clippers can get their first feel-good win against, I think, probably arguably the worst team in the NBA right now. Because let's just be honest, they stink. Their leading rebounder has 6.8 a game, and that's Jaren Jackson Jr. That's not good enough. 24th in points per game, 21st in rebounds, 21st in assists, and 16 in defensive rating, which is a middle of the pack team. When you have two of the last defensive player of the years in Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr., you would think those two could carry them to at least a top 10 defensive team. So that's kind of disappointing. But I mean, man, they need y'all like I need a haircut. Quick, fast, and dirty. So
yeah. So let's move on from the Memphis Grizzlies to Giannis Antetokounmpo. And this was I believe Tuesday, Wednesday night. They were playing the Detroit Pistons, struggling as the Bucks have all season. And Giannis, he told, I forgot which player he dunked on, told him they were too small, and he was ejected from the game. That was his second tech. So he, of course, you gotta go. Now, for me, that's ridiculous. I mean, you want these guys to be competitive. You don't want them to, I mean, what was he supposed to do? Hug the guy after dunking on him? What else is he supposed to do? It's you want that competitive play. And I think for the NBA right now, with the advent of social media and you finding out that a lot of these players are good friends, where back in the day we thought everybody just hated each other. Now you lose that stigma of competition because all these guys are cool with each other. So when you have somebody show the emotion that Giannis showed, do you want to punish that? I mean, I don't get it. If I was Adam Silver, I'd have that rescinded quick, fast, in a hurry, because that was just ridiculous. And you don't want to scare players. Just thinking about the players of the past, Shaq would have been ejected almost every game. Sean Kemp, Charles Barkley, Kobe, Jordan, they wouldn't make it through a first half if you're going to call a tech on that. So I thought that was ridiculous. What's your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, this is kind of like where you're starting to see like a big, difference in terms of like how refereeing can really impact how players play, the way they, move on and off the court. Because if you can get thrown out for just dunking on somebody and giving them the look, I mean, that's very telling of today's NBA. And you got to think as a fan, Wednesday night, middle of the work week, I'm spending, my hard-earned money on a Bucks Pistons game because I'm not there to see the Pistons. Let's be honest. I'm there to see Giannis dunk on some people and show that passion, that effort. And then for him to get thrown out, I mean, thankfully the Bucks still won. But like, from a Bucks fan, I'm not just trying to see Dame Lillard, Middleton and Riff Raff. I'm trying to see Giannis, right? So, and I mean, I know Jaren Jackson Jr. got thrown out a couple games ago, and I think Draymond just got thrown out last night, although I'm sure the Draymond one was probably more warranted.
Yeah.
But you don't want to see top guys getting thrown out for just showing emotion, because basketball is an emotional sport. These players are trying to win games for, proper seedings in the playoffs. And so if they show some effort and some emotion, like, you don't want them to play like robots.
Exactly. This is entertainment.
Yeah, it's
so at the end of the day, sports is entertainment. So you want to be entertained. And Giannis just dunking and smiling and going back down the court versus Giannis actually having some emotion and getting in the face of his defender. Which one you want to see and which one's more entertaining? Right. But we're going to move on to LeBron James. He returned to Miami Monday. The Lakers unfortunately came up short. But before then, he was asked, does he feel like his career would have been as legendary had he not took his talents to South Beach? And this is what LeBron had to say. I think I would still be at the level no matter if I would have came here or not. Let's not get it twisted. The 4 years I was here, it was amazing. I loved everything about it. Love this franchise. This franchise is top tier. It's one of the best franchises in the world. But as far as my career was going to be my career as far as individually, because I know how much I put into the game and I know how much I strive to be as great as I can be. But as far as what I was able to learn here was second to none, that's for sure. Okay, now this caught the ire of some big names in sports media, but before we get into that, do you have any comments on what LeBron had to say?
No, I agree with him. I'll let you bring up the next comment that you have before I respond, but okay. I agree with what you're saying.
Okay, well, one of his biggest backers is Shannon Sharpe. And quick side note before I get into that, I thought it was really cool that ESPN and First Take decided to emanate from some HBCUs actually throughout this week. Both of their alma maters, Shannon Sharpe, Savannah State, and Stephen A. Smith, Winston-Salem State. As an alumni from a HBCU, and you have attended an HBCU before, homecoming is a big deal. So to have that be seen by hundreds of thousands of people on television, to kind of put us in the spotlight on ESPN, which those colleges, those schools probably not going to get that kind of limelight for the most part throughout the year, unless they're just a crazy good team. We don't get that kind of support from those big companies. So the fact that they were highlighted, I thought was really cool of them to do that. Got anything to talk about for the the coolness of the HBCUs being emphasized by ESPN, the First Take?
No, yeah, I think it's a great thing, and I think it's something that Stephen A. is definitely adamant about continuing, even in post his career at ESPN. I will say, in terms of me being at HBCU, my experience, I had classmates. They literally tried to do everything in their power to make sure all their schoolwork was done, because the week of homecoming, they weren't going to class. It was straight parties, great times all around, and they were literally classes were so dry because everybody was out doing their thing for homecoming, because it's that big of a deal at HBCU.
Homecoming, where we're from, it shuts down the whole city almost. The whole city engages our, I'll go ahead and say the name, North Carolina A&T State University. All of Greensboro embraces us during that time, and it's a big deal. It brings in a lot of money, and it's a really cool thing to see us get together and enjoy a pretty good time. So I thought that was really cool of Stephen A. and ESPN and First Take. But Shannon Sharpe took some he had his own opinions on what LeBron had to say, and I'm gonna play those right now.
Shannon?
Yes.
Do you agree with what LeBron said about his time in Miami?
Hell no, I vehemently disagree. I strenuously disagree with what he said. At the time that he had arrived in Miami, he had two regular season MVPs and one finals appearance through his first 7 seasons. LeBron, do you realize the reason why you got into the GOAT conversation? Because of what transpired in Miami? You won 2 more finals MVPs. You won 2 more regular season MVPs. You went to 4 straight finals. LeBron, how can you say that your career was going to be the same without going to Miami? LeBron, I'm not so sure. Had you not gone to Miami, how do I make a compelling case? And I can argue any case before the Supreme Court. How do I make a case that he's a top 5 player if he doesn't go to Miami, Stephen A? I don't understand why LeBron wants to be so dismissive. Okay, I get it. You dislike Pat Riley. Pat Riley didn't give you the latitude that Cleveland, like the Lakers, do. I get everything that you're saying from that aspect, but to sit there and sit in front of the media and say your career was going to be the career. Come on, LeBron, man, you got to stop this. It's okay to give the Miami Heat the credit that they deserve.
So, what do you think about Shannon's comments towards LeBron?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, I know he's one of the biggest LeBron fans, like yours truly. But I disagree. I mean, I think if you look at it and if you go back in that time frame, that summer of 2010, there was multiple reports of LeBron not only going to Miami, but also the Chicago Bulls and the New York Knicks. Now, then the second question would be, well, would LeBron still be as successful on either one of those teams as he was in Miami? Well, you also have to think about LeBron, Bosh, and Wade, even Mike Miller, had all planned on teaming up. And in typical New York Knicks fashion, they jumped the gun and they signed Amari Stoudemire. I want to say it was July 5th, 2010. And everybody knows, if you go back and look, LeBron's decision was July 8th, 2010. Mm-hmm. So that would mean that because Amari Stoudemire signed with the New York Knicks, that already took up some cap space. And if you have LeBron, Bosh, and Wade already wanting to team up, well, then we don't want to bring in Bosh if we already got Amari Stoudemire, who they're pretty much considered, equals, and they play the same position. And like then we go with the Bulls, right? With the Bulls, you had D Rose, you had Joakim Noah, and there were talks about Luol Kirk Heinrich, and a couple other pieces being moved around to bring in like a Chris Bosh. So you would have Rose, Bron, Bosh, Joakim Noah, and the rest of that core. And then you're asking, could that core have won 2 out of 4 championships or more? I think so. The only difference I say with LeBron going to the Bulls, because you got to think, what made LeBron and D Wade, I'd say so special, was the fact that everybody and their mama knew that it was Dwayne Wade's team at first. And it was that first year when they played against the Mavericks, it was kind of an identity crisis where you had everybody knowing it's D Wade's team, but D Wade saying, hey, this is my team, but I'm still trying to let LeBron take control because we go much higher when he's number one. I don't think they run into that problem with D Rose, because you got to think D Rose is a phenomenal player at that time, but he wasn't there as long as D Wade was with Miami. He wasn't as established, and just like D Wade, D Rose is an unselfish player. He would have gladly gave LeBron the reins, and I think, personally speaking, that giving LeBron the keys early, and there was no kind of identity crisis, no Pat Riley looming over his shoulder. LeBron could have taken that Bulls team to a higher level, I think, faster, because there would have been no tug of war for whose team is this, right? So for me personally, I do think for the Bulls, they win, 2 out of those 4, however you want to slice it, maybe even more, but he still gets those finals MVPs, and those championships, of course. The only thing I could say about the New York Knicks, I mean, it'd be the same thing, truthfully speaking. I think, again, since it's not D Wade's team, he doesn't have already a championship there. If he goes out to the New York Knicks with LeBron and Bosh, they get some more pieces to fill out that roster, I think LeBron still becomes LeBron, and he's still in the same conversation that he's in today as being arguably the GOAT. My GOAT, of course, but arguably one of the best players to ever play the game.
All right, I can respect that. I kind of agree with Shannon. I think Miami taught LeBron a sense of toughness. I think it was good to go to a team with structure because, Pat Riley runs it the way Pat Riley wants to run it. And he should, because that guy's been to the NBA Finals how many times and has coached and done everything at a high level. So him kind of overseeing everything, I thought was good for LeBron so he could get that part. I don't think he I can tell he didn't like that part of the process of Miami. He didn't like that, he was kind of under, someone else's watch. And it wasn't just free for him to do what LeBron wants to do. They had a structure and they had a kind of a leadership, different roles. They had D-Wade in a role and, LeBron had to take his role. But I do agree with you about Chicago. I think that team would have been crazy if you think about it. D-Rose, MVP level, Bosh, LeBron, Noah. I mean, teams would have been locked down pretty much. That team already was really good without LeBron, without those guys. That team, I mean, if we go back, had D-Rose not gone down, who knows what would happen? And I believe that was the 2013 or 2012 playoffs when D-Rose went down, because they were right there. They were neck and neck with Miami throughout all those seasons when they were at full strength. So, adding LeBron would have been crazy, but I think he needed Miami at that time. He needed what Miami offered him and how they built him into what he was. And the fact that he was able to go back to Cleveland as a monster. I mean, 2016 LeBron was just a monster. So I think he needed the Miami Heat to really, and that organization to really teach him how to get to that next gear and that next level. So we're going to transition now. During that ESPN First Take that time at the HBCU, we also had Stephen A. do something that a lot of people like to do, and it's pretty fun to do that. So he gave us his top 5 NBA players of all time. And I would play the clip, but it's long, it's kind of drawn out. But I will give you his top 5. From number 5, Bill Russell. Number 4, Magic Johnson. Number 3, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Number 2, LeBron James. And number 1, Michael Jordan. And so we decided we're going to do our own top 5 NBA greats of all time. Who are the greatest players, the top 5 greatest players in the NBA? We're going to kind of bounce off each other. We're going to start with our 5s, give our reasons, and keep moving. So I'm gonna let you start with your number 5. I'll tell my 5, and then I'll tell my 4. So we'll kind of snake it around how we get to both our greatest players of all time.
Yeah, so I mean, with mine, it's pretty simple. I think going into these top 5 lists, anybody who basically has any kind of basketball knowledge, pretty much 1 through 3 is pretty much identical. Maybe the order might be a little different, but the top 3 are for sure who they are. But my number 5, I mean, the greatest power forward of all time. You ask anybody that question, of course, they're going to say Tim Duncan, right? There's not really much to go into it. Obviously, his number speaks for himself. He was honestly a Ray Allen 3 away from being a 6-time champion as opposed to a 5-time champion. But we're not going to get into that right now. He should have been on the floor for that play. There's no reason Chris Bosh should have got that rebound to throw it out to Ray Allen, because Tim Duncan should have been on the floor getting that rebound and then securing them their championship. But anyway, yes, Tim Duncan is the greatest power forward of all time, so he makes number 5 on my list.
Okay, interesting. So number 5 on my list is probably not somebody that's on most people's list, even though he's got to be in that top 10 somewhere. That's Shaquille O'Neal. And maybe this is just from me growing up during that time. I saw Shaq come into the NBA. I saw him grow into the monster that three-peated with the Lakers. Getting to see him on television, you just didn't realize how good that guy was. And I'm from the era where you had some of the greatest centers of all time. You had Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Anthony Alonzo. Those guys were, huge, big centers. To watch what Shaq would do to David Robinson was just ridiculous to me. He would ragdoll David Robinson. He just ragdolled these guys. And I think the only knock to Shaq is that his career didn't end that great. He kind of got lazy towards the end. And about when he got to Phoenix, that's when he just kind of plummeted. But yeah, Shaq from 92, I believe he came in 92 through his Heat run, one of the greatest centers ever, or if not the greatest center ever. So that's my number 5. My number 4, I'm with you, Tim Duncan, greatest power forward of all time. Actually, a fun fact, he spent most of his career after 2005 playing center, but he's still the greatest power forward. But, for my criteria, I choose winning. Now, he didn't have, his career, he ended with 19 points, 10 rebounds, 2.2 blocks. Doesn't look like a greatest player of all time. But there's one number that separates him from almost anybody, and that's 71.9%. That's his winning percentage in the league. I mean, that guy was a winner. So if you're a winner and you're a prime figure on your team, you got to be great. So, that's why Tim Duncan is my number 4 greatest player of all time.
Okay. And, to respond just really quickly about your Shaq point, the reason why I didn't put him in my top 5 was because of like the longevity of his career and the fact that he had potential to be top 3 minimum had he, took better care of his body, took the game a little bit more serious, things of that nature could have really put him a step above the rest or more than what he already was when he was dominant.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
But my number 4 is Earvin Magic Johnson, the best point guard of all time. Because again, when you're talking about a top 5 list, if you are the greatest point guard of all time, and I know this might be a debate since Steph Curry's starting to come in. I don't think he's there yet, but he's knocking on the door. I think he's
not a point guard.
Well, I mean, he's a point. He don't play
a
like
combo guard,
but he is technically in today's game a point guard. But yes, the best quintessential point guard, Earvin Magic Johnson. He's got the highest career average for assists at 11.2. I don't know if anybody's going to break that anytime soon. But yes, 5-time champion, 3-time finals MVP. I know his numbers don't scream at you in terms of his points per game, but he's playing with the likes of Kareem, James Worthy, Jamal Wilkes, Michael Cooper. You get the picture. All these guys can put the ball in the hoop, and someone's got to set the table for them, and that is Magic Johnson.
So, okay. So what's your number? Who's your number 3?
So number 3, I have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think this is now when we get into the territory of these 3 names coming up are obviously interchangeable in most people's eyes. But I mean, I think anybody having Kareem outside the top 3 is pretty egregious. He was the previous all-time leading scorer until, my man had come through and take that spot. 6 rings, 6 MVPs, 15-time All-NBA, 11 All-Defense, which is super slept on, by the way. Yeah, number 3 on my list is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Okay, so number 3 on my list, and don't throw stones, but LeBron James is my number 3 greatest player of all time. And I just told you what my criteria is winning. Now, he's got the accolades, he's got the stats pretty much conquered, but he doesn't have the winning that those guys and the guys above him had. Yes, he's won multiple championships with different teams. That's great. He's the scoring leader of all time. That's a huge feat. But he doesn't win when it matters. Tim Duncan, 5-1, wins when it matters. Kareem wins when it matters. So my number 3 is LeBron James.
We gonna get into this. I know time permitting, we can't do it today, but we're
definitely going to. That's why I'm leaving out a lot of stuff that I would say, but I'm gonna save that for that debate. So my number 2 is, of course, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. one of the greatest winners of all time. Just like Tim Duncan, you could win at any level you put him at. He had tons of longevity. He changed his game up to be able to handle the rigors of being a center throughout the mid 80s, from being dominant in Milwaukee with the Bucks to pretty much being a huge asset to the Los Angeles Lakers. You covered all his achievements. I mean, he's my number 2. So he's definitely, I think we kind of overlook him a lot. And but he is definitely, I don't see how you could put LeBron over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We just forget about what what Kareem did. But y'all, anyway, I'm gonna get you do your number 2 and 1, and we can talk about that.
Well, I think it's pretty clear at this point who number 2 and number 1 is for me. But number 2, of course, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. A lot of people's actually undisputed GOAT, and I understand. And I'm not going to fight somebody over if they got LeBron 2 or LeBron 1 or MJ 1, LeBron 2. Like, whatever the case is, LeBron is in that conversation. 1 and 2, I'm cool. If you got him at 3, we're gonna have a conversation, because I don't know if I truly.
We're gonna have a conversation. Then we're gonna have a conversation.
Everybody who brings up the GOAT debate, it's LeBron and MJ. So for me, if it's the whole populace talking about it, these two are the greatest 2 players to ever play the game. Whether you have LeBron or MJ number 1, doesn't really matter. It's really, at that point, your personal opinion. But for me, I have LeBron at number 1, because the one stat that you revered Michael Jordan for was his scoring ability. And the crazy part is, LeBron isn't even considered a great scorer, but he's the NBA's undisputed all-time scoring leader. Passing, when you said, I don't know how you could put LeBron over Kareem, well, remember the night when LeBron passed Kareem on the all-time scoring list and he gave him the ball and said, here you go, young man, it's yours now, right?
And then they lose that game. So,
they probably did, but that team wasn't really all that good. But that's not the part of this conversation. But LeBron is the number 1. 4 rings, 4 finals MVPs. And the one thing, because I know we're running out of time, the one thing that sets him apart about everybody on this list, he is a one-man team. He can do everything. He can score better than Magic. He can score, as good, if not better, than Michael Jordan, right? On top of also rebounding the ball at a high level, facilitating the offense, and just leading all his teams. When you talk about his intangibles in terms of winning time, it's on him. He doesn't have the luxury of having a great coach. It's just LeBron and everybody else. I'll let you go next.
All right. For the sake of time, I'm gonna just tell you, you know who number 1 is. Michael Jordan. He's the greatest. Even everyone in the NBA says he's the greatest. So LeBron's contemporaries chose him over LeBron. So that tells you all you need to know. But the one mic drop for Jordan being the greatest was the All-Star game a few years back in Cleveland. 75 greatest players of all time introduced. You're in who you say is the greatest of all time's home. You're in his home gym. And who gets the biggest ovation of all of them? So after being retired for 20 years now, he still gets the biggest reactions of anybody. He's the GOAT. There's no debate. We'll debate about it at some point, but there's really not.
Definitely debate.
he globalized the game. If it wasn't for Michael Jordan, you probably wouldn't see a lot of stuff you see today. Still holds a record of the highest rated NBA finals of all time. But we're running out of time, so we're going to end this episode here. Please check us out. We want to start doing Wednesdays as well. So just like and subscribe so you can check us out some more. Sorry we had to end this so abruptly, but Zoom about to kick us out. So we'll check you guys out Wednesday for some more NBA talk, and hope you guys enjoyed this episode.